Facebook family and friends. What's going on? Saturday morning, Formers Anonymous. You know what it is. You know where we are. You know, a little bit of their technical difficulties with the music. So you know what it's about. It's Formers Anonymous. It's every Saturday morning, me and my absolutely amazing co-host and resident asshole Sammy Rangel go on live. We talk about recovery, where we're at, how we can improve our lives. So let's welcome Senior Samuel. Morning.
What's up, folks?
What's happening, bro? How you doing this morning?
What's up, peeps? Bloods.
we already got people on. Look at that.
We don't know who's listening. All of you are welcome.
Right. Let's get it in. Let's get it done.
Dude, you know, it's been like 80s out here and it feels like fall.
Yeah. Because it hasn't been, 196 degrees in hell.
They're talking about we're about to get buried in snow now. It's like, oh, can we talk about global warming? I mean, when are we going to recognize this, dude? Dude, I was in St. Louis for a couple days, man, and it's funny how when you're dead asleep, but you wake up knowing something's wrong, right? That tells you like some of your senses never go to sleep, like they're still up. I mean, you can sleep so deep that maybe you don't hear them, but I woke up knowing something was wrong.
Right.
And the only thing I could attribute it to is that the freaking fan was not working. And then I got to go pee. So I'm trying to go pee and I can't get none of the lights on. Then as the fog of sleep at 3:30 starts to wear off, it's saying the power's out. This is like the second time I've been in the zombie apocalypse in big buildings, big giant buildings. And then this hotel, a lot of their exit lights weren't working. So it was pretty freaking dark. So here I am playing like zombie apocalypse, going down flights of stairs with only my phone light. That is so creepy to be doing that. And then I get down there and no one's around.
Just empty room.
I'm like, they've abandoned the ship.
And left you guys in there.
But the reason I brought that up is because like St. Louis has been flooding. Las Vegas, dude, Las Vegas is flooded. These are places that don't freaking flood.
Las Vegas is in a 5-year flood right now. In fact, Lake Mead is at the lowest level water-wise that it has been since it was created in the 1930s. And like they're talking about putting water restrictions on. Well, there are water restrictions on all of the southwestern states. Including California, New Mexico, because Mexico gets its water from Lake Mead as well, and Lake Pelton. And
do you want to know where they get the water for these lakes and for the cities? California.
No,
they pipe it in, bro.
California pipes it in. Southern California doesn't have any water. They pipe it in from
Las Vegas. Pipes Colorado. It in from California.
No, they pipe it to California.
No, there's no water in Las Vegas. It's a desert.
Right. But above that are several lakes and dams, including Lake Mead, Lake Powell, Hoover Dam, Lake Pelton. Those lakes, those reservoirs feed Vegas and then continue south into California. So California gets its water from them.
That's so crazy, man.
Right. So it's at just over 1,000 feet. And it should be at like 3,000 feet. It's nuts. So they need that water. They need that flooding. I'm glad they're getting some water down there. But it's so much water. It's damaging now. Like if you're not fucked on one hand, you're fucked on the other. First, you're starving for water. And now you have so much water that fucking the strip in Las Vegas like is flooding and nobody can go there. Right?
Man,
crazy. That's crazy.
So it's been a little crazy. It sounds like it's going to be crazy. My pond is the size of a pancake right now. I don't know how. Not quite sure how that's going to work out, but
getting it in. What are you going to do?
Yeah, I'm still enjoying life though, man. That's for damn sure.
Heck yeah.
And I wouldn't be a good dad if I didn't say Samaya's birthday's tomorrow. She's going to be 14.
Jesus Christ, bro.
She's just under 6 foot, dude.
I know. Hey, she's a tree, bro.
And then I was listening to her in the car, and her voice is deep as F, man. I was like, God damn. Like
Yeah.
all of it's hitting at once, you know. She's talking and laughing, but her voice is like deep. And I'm like, holy crap, man. Like
We were at my niece's graduation party, and Charlie was there. He's friends with them too. And we were at the Crestview Park, and we were talking about our last FA picnic that we had out there at Crestview Park.
Yeah.
And you had come up, and we were looking through the photos, and I mean, just how small the kids were back then.
Yeah.
Like, all of them, like, you know, I've watched Salinas and Samaya grow up, and so you know, it's been like kind of normal that they're getting bigger, but then you look at the pictures from then and you're like, man, they were just so little. They were
interesting factoid, right? The youngest picture, the youngest picture of you at your youngest age is also the oldest picture you have of yourself.
Right. Dichotomy of that, right?
Right. Yeah. Gosh, man. You know, and I think that's a good segue, man. Talking about families today, right? And families, loved ones, and the disease, right? And it doesn't even have to just be loved ones. It can be people who are like in your community. Because, you know, I preach in the literature that we have four main relationships. We have relationships with, you know, family, of course, like your blood relatives, your blood ties, and your friends, which would include loved ones, you know, significant others, people that these are people who probably know more detail about you, you know, and doesn't have to be blood, but can be better than blood sometimes, right? So when we say family and friends, it's all these important relationships. And then we have those relationships with others, you know, that are part of our neighbors, the corner store people, the places we frequent, right? You know, where we have a little bit of an identity with, right? And so that's one. That's the core of that. And then you have your community, your larger community. And this is where you go to the mall. You don't necessarily have relationships there, but you're engaging with others all the time, or colleges, things like that, right? Like these are part of your routine, but probably more frequent contact and more distance in the sense between you and them. And then you have like your professional and legal relationships. These are the macro systems. These are the big systems in your life. Like, for example, can you pinpoint at the state level the person who runs the DMV?
No.
Right. But there's an image in your head of the DMV, right? That's when you know you're like in a macro system, a big giant system, because you're aware of the system, but you can't associate a person with it, but it still is impacting your life, right? And then the final, I think there's the two final ones are your spiritual relationships that you have, you know, and the relationship you have with yourself. And whether you're in recovery, whether you're in the grips of addiction, whether you don't need a 12-step program, those are all the relationships that all human beings have. And when you add a disease to the dynamic, it can disrupt any and all. It can trigger any and all or parts of those different systems, right? And it can complicate any of that, you know. And this is why when we think about, a lot of us feel like we have lost family, or that we're not a part of a system. The reality is you can't sever any of those connections from your life. You can try to, you can pretend that you can, but the only thing that really adjusts is the distance between any of those things, close and far, you know, like a Sesame Street lesson, right?
Yep.
And near and far. And so we just adjust our proximity to various aspects of any of those relationships. We adjust it. You know, there's going to come a point when you have to go to the DMV, but other than that, when do you ever interact with it? Do you follow them on Facebook? Probably not, right? Like you can adjust your proximity, you know, and then you may not even know that you're putting yourself closer to a system until it's too late, right? Like, so maybe you commit a crime and now all of a sudden you got law enforcement and courts and DOC in your life, probation and parole. And then you work through that system to put more distance, and you have to work your way through that, right? Like, this is just normal dynamics. We all get that.
Right.
What we're going to zero in on today is what it's like to be on the outside of that relationship watching someone struggle with addiction. So this would be the bystander, the outsider. You can be family, but you're still the outsider because the person with the addiction is the only one with the addiction. And you could be their son, you could be their mother. You are still on the outside of that, but you're in closest proximity to that person. I think the first thing we got to recognize is that anyone connected directly or indirectly to someone with an addiction, whether it be alcoholism, criminality, what have you, other drugs or substances, sex, money, your family and your friends and those significant others are attached to that as well. Again, you cannot sever the connection to those people, places, or things, but the proximity of which can adjust. Some will be sucked into the vortex, other will be pushed away out of it, thrown out of it, and some people, you might have family you've never talked to or haven't talked to in years. You're still connected and they still cross your mind. And there are still things that they say or do or that you say or do that affect each other, but you may just be from experiencing that from very far away, right? You're still connected to that. So what do we know? There are a few things that we know are impacting us. Families confuse their personal experience sometimes with having like professional knowledge, or like the addicts sometimes will say those professionals don't really know what they're talking about. But the reality is that it takes a mix. It takes a mix of family, professionals, and among the professionals, mental health providers, blah, blah, blah. So, for example, and I've used this before with FA, Monte, who of your siblings, who are you closest to? Like, who do you talk to the most?
My older sister, Elizabeth. We talk almost daily.
So you have a decaying tooth in your mouth, right? I'm just making this up. You have a rotting tooth that is
because I ain't got no teeth.
That is causing you bad pain, like severe pain, right? And your face is swollen, and your eye is infected, and it's shooting into your ear, like you're in the worst pain. Now, as close as you are to Elizabeth, as much as she loves you and knows about you, right, including the fact that you've had this tooth, are you going to go to her or a dentist when your tooth hurts?
I go to a dentist.
Okay, but see, when we are in addiction, we don't typically choose the professional. It's the last person on the list, whether we're the family and loved ones of this person or the person going through. Why is that? Right? When we really just think about how crazy it is, if you've got a toothache, you're not going to keep it a family secret. And even if you don't have money for the dentist, guess what you're going to be trying to do? You're going to be trying to find a dentist. You're going to be scrambling to try to get somebody in your life that's going to help you fix that freaking tooth. Now, I know some of you rugged motherfuckers out there are going to pull it out with some pliers, some bean saws, right? Like, I get that. Not recommended. Not the typical course. For those of us blessed with insurance, state or otherwise, we're going to use the freaking dentist.
I pulled one out in prison. It was horrible.
Of course you did, you fucking caveman.
It was the worst thing I ever did to myself in my life.
You fucking Neanderthal. You're a Neanderthal. Like, dude, we know you. But
thank you, sweetie.
Are you gonna do that for shits and giggles? No.
No.
Right? You're going to go to a professional. Now, there are some things that happen. Like I've already said, like typically the professional is the last person on the list for families. And this is cultural. This runs in certain cultures where professionals really aren't a part of what we think as the solution. Here's the part that's bothersome about this even more so. By the time we go to a professional, it's in the stages of either getting very close to or in the stages of too late. Mm-hmm. Things have already gone tremendously terrible and bad. And we're normally in the very late stages of the problem, whether it's cancer, diabetes, high blood pressure, alcoholism, obesity, our teeth, we typically don't engage with those things until it's too late. And you know, it's cultural, man. There are cultures that just don't, and for good reason. I get, and that brings to me and you were prepping for this call. You brought up this historical trauma that we all experience because of interactions with systems, right? So, you know, my family grew up in Texas in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So you know what they went through, right? So there is not a lot of trust for systems, and not a lot of trust for systems where nobody in those systems looks like us, right? So they'll never go. They'll never go to the doctor if they can avoid it. You know, it's by the time they go, things are super terrible, right? You follow me? That's normal for us, man. So it's not like we don't understand why we don't go to these doctors. Hell, you know, if you're Latino, even if you're native, you might go to a brujeria or a medicine man trying to get your stuff cured because it's internal, right? It feels like an internal system that you're going to, but eventually you're going to have to go to the ER or the doctor or the psychiatrist or the psychologist. Or eventually things get to the point where you have to take other measures. But the problem with this is that a lot of family members, a lot of loved ones are, while they're not the ones stuck or in the grips of addiction, maybe they're not the ones drinking all the time. Maybe they're not the ones shooting up or whatever, committing crimes. They are attached to that disease. They're attached to that dynamic. They are attached to that system. And we're all affected by it. And here's what's important about this knowledge. If you're connected to this in a personal way, your judgment will always be clouded. Always. You cannot be objective. You're going to try to be objective, but you know what? Want to stop being your mom's son. Can you do that? Can you actually do it? Can you stop being your mother's son? Even if you stop talking to her, can you stop being your mother's son?
No,
right?
Mom.
Even if you forgive her for everything she's done to you and you have the best relationship, can you stop being your mother's son? No. I haven't talked to my mom in years for good freaking reason, of course, but have I stopped being her son? No. Right? You can't sever the connection. You can live under the illusion that you can or that you have, but in reality, neither you nor I can stop being our mother's son, for better or for worse. Now, and as objective as you're trying to be, you can only be so subjective because you are personally involved. Now, this personal involvement goes in many directions, but there are a couple of main ones. For example, and you brought this up, like in your experiences in your life, working with others too, you know, through our program, that we recognize a lot of people have unreasonable expectations of the addict and even maybe of themselves, right? Here, let's talk about so we're going to call family, friends the third party. We'll group everyone who's not the addict third party, right? There are third party members who think that if they love you enough, they can change you. Farmers know that better than anyone, right?
Yeah.
We've always had women in our lives who thought they were going to change us if they could just love us hard enough, long enough, good enough, right?
Yep.
And we know, we've learned the hard way, and so have they, that's not possible. But they try. And, you know, I feel horrible today. Like, literally, there's guilt there. You know, like, I feel shame when I think about the women who tried to love me, who were really just trying to love me. But what I know today is that we were both sick in our own ways. The disease of addiction infects everyone around it. And we were sick, you know, like, and we caught the cold. We caught corona from each other, basically. You know, we caught the flu from each other, basically. And some of us recover from that better than others, right? Now, that happens. So we don't necessarily always recognize that what we're trying to do is actually a part of our sickness. Right? The best intentions, she's trying to love us to death, but it's a part of the sickness. It's a predictable dynamic. We call that, you know, there are terms for that. There are enablers. You know, this is the person who will make excuses for you at work, at the doctor's, lie for you, minimize the stuff for you, or try to shame the hell out of you. Put you out to call you out. in front of everybody, you know, put you on the cross and nail you
Yeah.
to the cross. It's either or, right? It goes to both
Yep.
extremes, right? Or there are those who just don't ever say anything. They just keep on moving. Nothing to see here. Don't be suspicious. Don't be like, you know, like just trying to get through it, you know. Like
Right.
there's all kind of responses to this shit, man. You know, some of us will try to laugh it away. Some of us will become sick ourselves. You know, we'll make ourselves sick. You know, and then of course there's those people who are always trying to be the stable one, but you're working against all those dynamics, and your stability isn't going to bring stability. It's going to make you feel good, make you look good, but your stability does not bring recovery deeper to the person, you know, that we're concerned. It's a part of the sickness too, you know.
Yep.
Now there are things that can work, things that can help, blah blah blah, but there's a lot to be said about what doesn't work, and that's kind of what we're talking about. What is part of the ignorance about the disease and the ignorance related to recovery that third party members typically experience? One of the things they experience are these unreasonable expectations, right? It's hard for trained professionals, people who have PhDs, master's degrees, to remain objective. It's hard. It becomes a skill, and it requires a lot of assistance, mentoring, coaching, supervision to flex that muscle. So imagine being a family member trying to remain objective, trying to be balanced. It's going to be equally, if not more difficult. The second thing is we don't understand it, but we think we do. So we apply our logic to what we think we know to a situation that we're ignorant about. I know that's complicated, but basically it leads to these unreasonable expectations. So my grandmother is 1 day sober, and my unreasonable expectation is that she should be able to nail this process because now she's sober, right? She should know what to do. She should be strong enough to do it. She should be able to do it. She should know how to do it. She should know everything that it takes to maintain this status. And if she doesn't, we tend to do something called impose a value judgment. That because you couldn't stay sober, you are a bad person. And even in the circles month, me and you have seen this together in other 12-step groups.
Yep.
You haven't hit your head hard enough. You know, we say things like you haven't hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
You haven't had enough. You know, you're resistant. You're not ready. You're not ready for the program. You're not working the program. Now, these are called value judgments. And as much as you think you know as a paraprofessional, you don't know enough, because if you knew more, you would know better. And the knowledge that would be better is that the expectation we put on people in recovery, whether it's early, middle, or late stages, is often unreasonable. And it's not because you're trying to do something bad, just like that girl trying to love us through, you know, our lifestyles. It's that's what you think it takes, or you should be thinking, because you think you know enough to actually have an opinion about the value of the person in front of you, about the depth of their experience and knowledge. What do we know about addiction month? We know that people who have been in recovery 25 years, and the main person I think about this is somebody who I never knew, but I identified with, was Mork and Mindy, that comedian.
Yeah, Robin Williams.
Robin Williams was sober in recovery, staunch recovery. I mean, public recovery for 25 plus years. When he drank, he ended up committing suicide. 25 years later, the guy should be considered an expert in recovery, right?
Right.
But what we don't want to accept is that there are parts of this disease we cannot control. And we might try to control it. And I think when you try to control the disease, you're not practicing recovery, because recovery isn't about controlling the disease.
Right.
You can't control cancer. Now, you can do things to prevent it to try to keep it at bay. Hell, you could be 100% healthy and living a 100% healthy life, and cancer can still come back and kick your ass. It's the same with any other disease, right? It has its own will because it's a living organism, and you're a symbiote, you know. Now, that's not to say I don't want people to hear me saying this is, if you're hearing this, it would be a mistake on the interpretation of it. That the addict is not responsible or accountable for his own actions. No, that is not the message.
Right.
They are. But I understand the limits of that accountability. I understand the limits of that responsibility. I understand how the outside forces can impact that. Right? It's a mix. I am responsible for for all of my decisions and all of my actions. But what I can't control is the impact of how the disease affects me at times. And sometimes I have interviewed so many addicts, so many formers. At this point, it's tens of thousands.
Yeah.
Where the majority have said, I am doing things against my own will. I can't stop myself from doing it. And imagine, like, if you've never had that experience, and I'm going to say we probably all have to some degree. Here's how I know this. Parenting. We all say, I'm not going to raise my voice anymore.
Yep.
Now, how many of us have gone to bed hating ourselves because I couldn't fucking keep my voice down when I got frustrated with my kiddo? Like, or for us fat fuckers, I want to lose weight. I want to stop smoking. I want to stop eating cookies. I want to stop drinking so much caffeine. Man, look. Fuck. We can't even do that.
Okay.
And I'm going to bet you everyone's got that one sister who's judging the addict in the family. Who's about 250. A solid 250.
Yeah.
Or a brother, or an asshole brother, we all got it. We don't even control our own lives to the degree that we expect addicts to.
Right.
But we think because, and here's where more of that unreasonableness comes in. It's a but me eating a cookie doesn't kill anybody. Yeah. Well, let's think about that. Let's reconsider that. Because your high blood pressure, your obesity, your trips to the doctor, your diabetes, don't think that doesn't scare the shit out of the people who love you, who are around you, or don't think that the community doesn't pay a price for that. When you think of how much society pays for other people's diseases, it's monumental. It's billions and billions and billions of dollars.
Yep.
The tax dollars go to. It's a ripple effect. This is not judgment. This is just showing connections on how these unreasonable expectations, and hell, and again, even if you're perfect, even if you have the recommended amount of body fat, you have a healthy, green, clean diet, the other issues are how you're judging people unrealistically because of how they act or how they behave or the choices they make while under the influence of a disease, under the impact of a disease. If you today, in today's era, still believe that all you have to do is make up your mind not to drink, you do not understand the disease component of addiction. There's and it's at this point it's willful. It's a willful ignorance because now you don't want to know, or you do this. You read the study, you read the evidence, you see the video and the documentary of how this works. And you say, that's bullshit.
Right.
That's all bullshit.
Right.
And normally that's because our own ego is in the way. And look, we don't want to think that another person is human because if we're such perfectionists, we have to be more than human when you're a perfectionist. And you know who the best perfectionists are, Monte?
Who?
Criminals.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And addicts.
Yep.
And then all of those codependent people, because we all think we have more control over life than we do, over others than we do, over ourselves than we do. And it's not good perfectionism. It's not like it leads to good things. It's that we actually think we're just in power and control. We're godlike in many ways and want to be godlike. And so the other thing is like if you feel that if you're better than the other person because you don't have the disease, that's pure ego. There's no compassion or empathy in there. And I can tell you, no one has ever came into a recovery program or to my office for therapy and said, you know, my mom and dad's ego really set me straight. Nobody ever said that.
Right. Their judgment just helped me completely.
Like I'm changed because of their you know what I'm saying? So, and we kind of know this, man, but we get sucked into this vortex. Our family members of people who are struck in the throes of addiction need therapy too, need counseling too, need professional support too. But a lot of us don't think that. Why should I have to go to counseling because you're sick? Well, because you're human.
Yeah.
And you're attached and you can't stop the effects of these things. You know, disease is something else. So another part of the ignorance is what is recovery? And I think this is an important part of this, Monta. There's a difference between not using and being in recovery. I know people who haven't drank in 20 plus years, who haven't used a substance in 20 plus years, but are not in recovery.
Yep.
They're not. You might think that sobriety is actually the main component of recovery, but it's not. It's an important part of it. You can't have recovery. But think of it this way. Monte, when you buy your next house, right? Are you going to buy a house that doesn't have a bathroom?
Right.
Are you?
No.
Would you buy? Right. But you're not buying the house.
Depends on what price I get it for, bro, because I'll build the bathroom if I got it.
No, that's not the point, right? That's that true ignorance we're talking about right now. Listen. But you're not buying the house because of the bathroom, are you?
No.
But you're also not gonna buy a house. It's like buying a car without an engine. You want to get in and drive, but you're not necessarily only buying the car because of the engine or because it has tires. That's all a part of it, right? Or what if the toilet was in the middle of the living room? Like you're gonna be like, that's so weird. Like, no, I don't think so. I remember looking at a house where there was a 4-inch drain pipe in the middle of the dining room, and it fucked up where you could put the anything.
Table.
It was like right in the middle of the floor. Like, who designed that? Yeah, Samantha, I see you. Chrissy, I see you. You know, it's not even about doing therapy together.
Hey, Chris.
It's just doing therapy. Like a lot of times you need to do that on your own and then maybe at some point come together is what I would recommend.
Mm-hmm.
Do your therapy. You know, you might be called in to weigh in on an issue with someone in therapy, but you should be doing therapy on your own for yourself because that's going to, remember, the closer you got, it's like Hancock. Remember when he was like attached to Charlize Theron, right? Like if they were too close together, they get sick. That was total. This was all about addiction, if you ask me. Right? We're too close, so we have to have some distance. Families are too enmeshed. That's why we don't. This is the good people here. These are the addicts here. When you come together, you don't come together like this. You come together like this, and now everything's all wonky and shit, right? And we don't realize that because we're just so accustomed and desensitized to the dynamics. Dude, when I get around my mother, I feel like I'm 11 again. I can't even help it. It makes me nauseous. I get so sick inside. I can't even be that close to her. It just makes me. There's nothing healthy about coming together, man. You know, I hear you, Sam. You're right on. You're spot on. You know, now what we're talking about though is this concept of what recovery is and what we think recovery is. I can tell you that just because someone is sober or clean or hasn't been committing crimes, they're not in recovery. I can't tell you in my reentry program, Monte, which you saw me do, these guys would say, I'm doing good. I'm doing great, Sammy. And I'm like, oh, yeah? And you know, I've asked you this question too, Monte.
Yep.
Why do you say that? And they say, well, I ain't been arrested in 6 months. What?
Eh,
That is
That's the
your
bar.
that is your compass to doing good, right?
It was mine. It was mine. You remember, bro? I used to say that all the time. I'm still not in jail. I'm doing great. I'm still free.
By luck,
Right.
by
Right.
ducking and dodging,
Right.
you know. But a person who hasn't been to jail, that doesn't mean that person hasn't been committing crimes or violating their probation and parole, right? And Sam, it's you're touching on a lot of stuff here. It's not that, look, people will always crave their addiction even in their recovery. Like me and Monte have to support each other through wanting to hurt people sometimes. That doesn't mean we're not in recovery. That's not, remember, the disease imposes thoughts. The disease imposes feelings. You can't control that. You know, what you in recovery, you have a system, right? Yeah, that's exactly it, Sam. Recovery has a system to help manage that, not control, manage that. Control wants to stop it. Managing accepts that it won't and that you have to do certain things. So what do? And it becomes more of a lifestyle habit in recovery too, right? Where you're feeling in a bad place, so you call somebody. You're feeling like you're not in a good place, so you go to a meeting. You feel you're not in a bad place, so you journal. You know, who knows? You exercise, you run, you lift weights, you sit down, you focus. You know, whatever it is. You know, there's a number of things, but what we're talking about is what recovery is and isn't. And so I really like how Sam's weighing in because it helps us tweak and clean up those thoughts so that they're just a little more reasonable.
Yeah.
Right. What it is that recovery is not about your behavior only. Behavior is the easy part. Look, of course you got to be sober, just like of course you should wipe your ass when you take a shit, right? Those are things you need to do, but that doesn't make the lifestyle, right? What makes the lifestyle of recovery is the emotional, spiritual, moral, principle guidelines that you're trying to adopt, develop, and bring into your life. It's also the crisis plan, a real plan. What do I do when shit hits the fan with me or in my life, right? And I have a plan for that. It also includes, and especially with FA, taking into account the effects of your life on other people, like your loved ones, your community, these systems, my spirituality. Does it bring me closer or drive me apart? It also includes, taking care of your mental health, like actually taking it to a professional environment and to your 12-step group together and balancing that out to work on your stuff. I've been out of prison 25 plus years. I'm still going to a 12-step group. Occasionally, I still go to counseling. And right now, today, here I am, a successful professional, been all over the world. I'm doing all kinds of great things in my life. I am still involved in executive coaching today. I have an executive coach today who's helping me become a better leader. People would say I'm already a good leader in some regards. I'm sure there's people who think, he's the worst leader. I acknowledge that. I'm working on that.
Right.
But look, I would say, and honestly, I feel like a good leader. I'm aware. I have high self-awareness of my faults, which are higher today than they were, say, 6 months ago, 1 year ago. But I'm aware that I have to continuously work on this process, and I'll never be done. And I think it makes me a better person. It's how I come back to the lab with new and improved ideas all the time.
Yep. Yeah. Great leadership skills have to include being able to know when you're not good at something, being able to know that you need to learn, and being able to know what tools to utilize in your toolbox, which includes the people around you. Like, yeah, I think it makes you a great leader. Like, already know I'm pig-headed, bro. I don't listen to it's hard for me to take advice. It's hard for me to take direction. And the only time I'm able to is when I can respect that person to a point where I think, okay, he's going to lead me or she's going to lead me to a better place. Like, let me listen to what they have to say. And I'll cut the ones that I think are fools completely out. Like, I can't hear them. Right. So yeah, no, I get it. And I agree, bro. Uh, it's been hard for me. Um, it's been hard for me because I've worked so hard to get where I'm at, right? And so when I see other people starting and they're not taking direction and they're not listening or they're not working at a level that I think they should be, right? There's that judgment that we all have, right? Like, well, they should be working harder, right? That's when I call you and I'll be like, man, bro, I'm fucking frustrated and like, man, why? And then we talk about why and we put it together. But
Yeah.
I just see it a lot, man. And sometimes it can be painful to see people expect something out of someone who can't
Who
give.
just can't give it what you think they should be able to give it.
Right.
What's up, Amy? Right? Like, listen, man, you can want a dog to fly like a goose or a fish to climb a tree. And the only person who's going to really be frustrated about it is you, because
Is
this
you,
shit ain't never going to
motherfucker.
happen.
Yeah.
What's up, Amy?
Morning, Amy. I love you, babe. Yeah. And sometimes we just got to accept that they still haven't learned how to ride this bicycle. And it's not for us to decide they can.
Look, I did an assessment for this company just a few weeks ago, and one of the questions they had a series of questions that related to childhood, none of which I related to. I didn't relate to one of their childhood questions. And there you see that the questions are not culturally competent. It doesn't take into the account that many adults have had traumatic childhood. So there's no questions about that. Or if you were to answer the question acknowledging your traumahood, it might make you look, based on how they're asking the questions. So what if they're asking questions like, I enjoyed my childhood. So if I put no, that's likely going to raise a red flag. Right? And I'm not confident that they are competent enough to not judge me based on that red flag, because they don't have the context to understand where that's coming from. Right? So if me and you took that assessment, we might not pass, because it doesn't take into account how much we've changed and worked on ourselves. It just says in this moment, in a significant developmental stage of this person's life, they had it rough, and they may not understand how that doesn't define who you are today. Right? That same type of mentality is what family, friends, and significant others apply to each other in their families, to loved ones. We want to condemn them. We want to call them out. We want to judge them. And because we think we're holding a moral line. But remember, we don't need moral judgment. We don't need value judgment. What we need is support, empathy, compassion. Again, no one ever said the way someone judged me changed my life. Yep. Typically, judgment leads to more shame, which complicates the recovery process.
Yeah.
And you're not going to shame people. I mean, I think that's what the old models of recovery do. They try to shame you into changing, so much to the fact that even after 30 years of recovery, you're still leading with the fact that you're still a disease. I'd rather you be able to lead. And how many people at our tables one day said, that is such a relief that you acknowledge that I'm in a process of change. And when people have failed, we have been good at not judging them, and so they'll come back.
Yep.
And it doesn't blur the message, as some people would accuse us of. The only thing that blurs the message is your judgment. And it makes people feel worse about themselves, and they're already there because they feel the worst about themselves. And you really want to add to that? It's like if you say, Sammy, your dad died. Your mom's next.
Thanks a lot, motherfucker.
Right. Like, what? Like, how are you helping me?
Right.
And then your kids. I've been there though, man. Now, so let's review for a quick hot second here. We have unreasonable expectations, partly due because we just don't have enough information about disease or recovery. But we also need to get our egos out of the relationship, which is why families shouldn't be seen as the main supporter. Look, so let's go back to the dentist. So you've already told your favorite sister, love you, but I'm going to go to the dentist.
Right.
Hold my coat. See, she still can play a part, but we have to know what part they play.
Right. And what part's healthy for them.
Yeah,
And
you
you.
can support me. You want to be there for me? You can support me. Right?
Absolutely.
What you don't need in that moment is, well, if you took care of yourself better. Well, if you really loved your mouth, you wouldn't do the things you do
Right.
and you wouldn't put the things in it that you shouldn't. That might be a little judgy for you, but I don't know.
Yeah.
You can put whatever you want in your mouth. I would still care about you, man. I would still love you.
There's nothing wrong with it.
No, I'm just saying. I'm saying that they said that. It's a scenario to that.
Right.
I'm saying like back off. Yeah. But the idea is that family can be there for you, but not as the professional source of help.
Right.
You cannot. What the reason professional help? Here's where some family members get frustrated. Amy, I know you're listening, so tell me if you know this to be true. Family members will say drinking isn't good for you, and you'll continue to drink. The doctor will say drinking isn't good for you, and then you'll stop. And now they're not happy that you stopped. They're mad that you didn't take their advice instead of the doctor's advice.
Right.
But the thing that works with the professionals, with the outside third party of the third parties, is the X factor. See, if Amy is the point of contact within the family for me, who holds the line, we have an existing dynamic, and that dynamic is the dynamic of origin, the original dynamic. It never leaves. The presence of it is always in the room, even if you're trying not to operate that way. Right? So it's kind of incredible, right? Like if you have family that maybe you committed crimes with, or maybe you were abused with, you may not be living in that abuse today. You both done some work, you both have healed, you've changed the way you're doing things. That doesn't mean that dynamic doesn't exist between you anymore. That dynamic is always there. You guys will always share that dynamic. And because you can't perfect objectivity, sometimes that dynamic will weigh in when you don't want it to be weighing in. You can't control it. See, the X factor doesn't have any of that history. And so the credibility of that X factor that comes from that external third party is important to the healing process that happens between you and a professional. Because now that person, now you talking to a doctor are saying, you're somebody different. You're somebody who doesn't know me, who couldn't be saying this to me for the wrong reasons. Monte, you have cancer. And you're like, it has a different impact than when someone in your family says it. It's validating. It might validate what Amy said. It might validate what others have been saying to you, but you needed that external voice to weigh in on your situation. Families have to take a step back. They have to evaluate the damage or the helpfulness of their statements. Are they rooted in ego? And ego isn't, again, we've talked a lot about ego here. We're not talking about ego. Your ego's too big. No, your ego's either too involved or too fragile to handle this. How do you know if it's ego? Well, when you're arguing with someone trying to convince them of your will, that's not where the person is at. See, a lot of professionals, some professionals get it right where they treat you where you're at, right? So if the goal is to get you to stop drinking one day and you say, well, all I can do is reduce how much I drink right now, that doctor is going to work with you from that point.
Yeah.
He's going to say, okay, well, then let's cut it down to 3 beers a day instead of a 12 pack. How's that? But your family is going to be like, you're still fucking drinking, and for good reason. Again, remember that girl who loves you, trying to love you out.
Yep.
We understand where it's coming from. It's coming from a place of love / misplaced reality, right? It's the reality that, and here's the other thing. I'm glad I just said that word reality. We live in different realities because, look, you might be able to not drink. That's your reality. That's your personal experience. And one day you may be drinking all the time, and that's your personal experience. And as much as you don't want to drink, you're still drinking, right? Like we have different parts of our realities, man. Your experiences, or maybe it's the word is experiences. We all have different experiences that influence the way we behave. So it's hard for me to look. I don't understand people who don't eat cake.
I don't either.
I don't get it. People who eat cake will look at me in a certain way, like you're just a fat fuck.
Okay with that. I got cake, you don't. Fuck you, homie.
I know you are, but where to buy?
You want to come over and eat cake?
Samantha says, too many people have an idea that if they cannot physically see the disease, it does not exist. True. That is, there's a lot of places where that applies. If I can't see it, it's not true. Mental or substance issues may not be seen, however. They're the hardest diseases to, I would not say cure, but help. Spot on, right? And again, this is our insights that we have. And things that we've learned, but a lot of people will know that it's a disease and be like, yeah, but
I love that too. The yeah, buts.
Yeah,
but I'm agreeing with you, but you're wrong.
Yeah, you could still make up your mind.
Right. I'm agreeing with you, but you can do something to stop it, or you can do more.
And I think we have to prioritize, and sometimes we have to have those tough discussions with people, but I think we need to prioritize and be selective and mindful and very intentional when we have those discussions. Like I've got a list of topics I got to cover with my daughter Selena's, but I'm being very intentional when I'm going to talk about them. And there's nothing bad. It's just she's coming home after being gone for like a year, and I'm trying to help just her get her legs back underneath her. And I if I were to dump it all at once, it'd overwhelm her, and it'd probably drive her further away from me than closer to me.
Yep.
I have to be. Look, we're all trying to be loving, but there are people who beat the shit out of you and think that they're being loving. There are people who don't say shit about you and never give you guidance and advice who think they're loving. I'm going to say, how do you know how to love someone? Well, you got to ask them what their love language is. Look, if I'm giving you tough love, Monte, because that's I think what you need, that may not be what you need. You might take it, but it may not be what you need. And if I were to ask you, hey, what's the best way I can help you? What's the best way I could love you right now? What's the best way I could share my thoughts and concerns with you? If I were to go to that point, even, you might tell me how to reach you better. And then I have to honor that. And it's going to be a struggle because I've got my way that I think will do it. And then you've got your way that you're asking me for. And what I know is going to happen is they're going to try your way. They're going to get frustrated because it didn't happen the way they thought it should. And then they're going to resort back to tough love.
Which sometimes doesn't work.
Well, we know that most times it doesn't work.
Right. I can't think of an instance where somebody was hard or mean to me and it helped me. Right? Like it's never gotten through, especially with me being a dumbass, right? You get tough with me and I'll shut down. Like if I can't put my hands on you, I just won't, you don't exist. I don't hear what you're saying.
And I do think sometimes you have to say what needs to be said or it wouldn't be responsible.
I agree with that.
Now, the one word that hasn't come up yet, I would say the main intervention, family, friends, loved ones, and others, should always be listening. Should all hands down, should always be listening. We should be listening way more than we're talking. That listening isn't just for you to understand, it's to give the other person the sense that you care enough about them to hear what they have to say. You know, if you would look, when I've been in arguments with, Julie or Selena's or Samaya, one of the best ways to recover in real time is just to stop talking and to start listening. The last thing I might want to do is hear you because I'm angry, but love tends to take over a lot more in my life right now. And I realize like they're trying to say something that I'm not getting. And whether I agree with it or not, what they're saying is like, I really want you to hear this. I really want you to feel me on this. What they're saying is they want to be validated. And listening doesn't mean agreement, but we often confuse listening for implyment of agreement.
I agree with that.
Like because I'm listening, you think I agree, or you get the feeling I agree, when really I'm just doing my part to hear you, not necessarily judge or evaluate what you're saying yet. I just want to hear you. Go ahead, tell me what's up. And try your best to keep your freaking mouth shut. It's hard. You think you're going to forget? Listen, we're going to wrap up with this. I got a call from Samaya's school one day here. Now, Samaya's never a problem in school. But I got a call from this teacher, and Samaya had kind of been blowing this teacher's instructions off about being quiet, so much to the point that he brought her to the front of the classroom, and she continued to be she was having a bad day. And that's not like Samaya at all.
Right.
And you already know she's got a lot of other stuff going on that really makes it hard for her just to be peaceful, right? But she's not a problem. She's never been a problem kid and still isn't.
Right.
She had a bad day. But when I got this phone call, my ego was like, my kid is being disrespectful. I've taught my kid how to be respectful. She knows that I'm not going to tolerate her being disrespectful. I have told her that when she is in school, the teachers are in charge.
Yep.
She needs to see them as she sees me. Like I had this whole rant in my head, right? And then I talked to Julie, and I'm like, and I reiterate all of that, like, how dare she? And thank God this was like at 10 in the morning because I had like until 3 in the afternoon.
3, yeah.
And then so Julie says, well, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I need to see how she's going to approach this before I decide. I had calmed down a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
She had been right there. I probably would have called her to the carpet right then and there, but I had time to calm down. And so when she got there, I sat down like, oh, Mija, I got a call from school, completely on the other side of the anger spectrum.
Yeah.
But I was waiting to be triggered by what she was going to say. Which trigger was it going to pull? And I had told you, well, if she says this, this, and this, then it shows me that she's taking responsibility, that she's thought about, the impact, and that she has the corrective action in mind. What's up, Jim?
What's up, Jimbo?
Dude, Samaya sits down. I tell her, I'm being very calm, kind of semi-professional. So, I got this call from school today. Why don't you tell me about your side and what happened? And she's like, yeah, I was not listening. I realized I was being disrespectful. I've already thought about what I'm going to say to apologize, and I'm not going to do that again. Dude, I couldn't even be mad. I was actually moved. I was actually ready to cry. Like it because I was so proud of her poise and like just willingness to own it and not hide it, make it no defensiveness whatsoever. Just owned it, man. And I'm like, Mija, I got nothing but respect for what you just said. See, but if I hadn't been willing to listen, because let me tell you what the old parent did. Let me tell you what some of you old parents did. Kid walks in the door. You don't check in. You don't ask how their day. I got a call from the school today. And you go to your room until you're ready to tell me what the fuck happened. And then when you come out of there, you be ready to eat some humble fucking pie.
Yep.
There will be consequences. Now go. Right? Or and that's mild. That could be turned into abuse, physical punishment, right?
Yeah.
But when you take the time to sit back, de-escalate, let it happen, let it play out, hear them. There was no need for me to punish her. No need. Because the kid was on it. She was owning it.
Yeah, but you know, parents they don't see. It's funny. Like we remember getting our asses whooped, right?
Yeah, and let's connect that moral, like, hey, we need to beat our kids, to the
Right.
fact that me and you collectively have like 40 fucking years in prison.
Right.
And are labeled some of the most violent men in the fucking system.
Right.
Like, let's not just stop with the fact, oh yeah, I got my ass beat. Look at how all you fuckers turned out.
Yeah.
You're all fucking dickheads and assholes. That didn't make you a better person.
Right.
Now you're beating the shit out of your kids now.
And it ain't helping none. They're still little fucking assholes.
How many people out of our past generation are alcoholics, fucking using drugs, violent, assholes, unemotional, too emotional, bipolar? Fuck, you think getting your ass beat is something to tote around like this is what we need to be doing for our kids?
This helped me.
Okay. How many presidential, debates have included, I'm here because my parents beat the shit out of me?
Right.
No. They tell stories like my parents, supported me, loved me, listened to me, guided me. Yeah, maybe some of them got like their ass tapped, but no one has ever been on the pillar of success. Like, yeah, it's because I got my ass beat so much when I was a kid. Fuck out of here.
Thank God my dad broke my arm.
Like, fuck out of here with that. Yeah, and the person, and 9 times out of 10, when I've heard that, I'm looking at the person like, and look how you came out.
Right.
You need my services.
So when people talk to me about it, they'll say that exact thing. Well, look how you are now. That wasn't, look, I'm not who I am now because I got my ass whooped as a kid. I am who I am now despite that, because it took me 20 fucking years of work to figure out that getting my ass whooped as a kid didn't help me at all, right? This is how I knew I couldn't spank my kids, Sammy. Danica was about 4, and she became, you know how Danica gets. She's very willful. She's her own boss. She's the boss of the world. At 4, she's telling 7-year-olds what to do. At 8, she's in charge of 12 and 13-year-old. Like, she gets the kids together and, listen, this is what you're going to do. And you're like, she's a little boss, right? And so she had argued with me and got disrespectful. And I was about to spank her, and she knew. And she looked terrified, right? There was this fear in her eyes that I couldn't, like, it stopped me in my tracks. I stopped. I started to cry. I held her. She was screaming at me because she was mad. I hadn't spanked her yet. And I realized I can't make my kid afraid of me. I can't make her terrified. Not that type of fear, right? I wanted to fear my disappointment. I wanted to fear, my suffering if I hurt because she does something. I wanted to feel afraid of doing that, right? But I don't need to do that by hurting her. I don't need to do that by hitting her. And that's what I knew, bro. I was like, I just can't do it. She's got the love tap on her butt, but a whooping, she ain't ever seen no whooping before.
Dude, Samaya, and other than when we're playing around, she is the most mild, respectful,
that's my buddy.
Empathic kid.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I have barely raised my voice at this kid in her life. Yeah. I have never, ever put my hands on her in anger. It's and on the other side, I have a child who I spanked a lot, who's off the chain, even still as an adult. And I regret that. But you can see my progression because I spanked at first, and a lot of times that's because I lacked the skills for other ways of parenting. To where I did a mix of spanking and talking, to where I did a lot of lecturing and talking, into where I found the balance between all of that minus the abuse. This is a very simple insight I learned, because when I realized I was spanking too much and too hard, I went to therapy. I went right back to counseling. I said, here's the situation. And my therapist listened, and she said a couple of things. It was the last session I needed. Here are the things she said that changed. Because, you know, I had a lot of reasons for spanking. They're being disrespectful. They're challenging me. They're getting in my face. They're doing this at school. You know, I had my justifications for it. And that lady says, first of all, you're big and they're little. It's what you just said, Monte. When you looked at Danica and you saw in her face, now that you're not mad, that size difference mattered to you. It's like, I'm big, she's little. This is not what. The other thing, and I would say from that is this how I want my daughters to think that men should be treating them when we think they're misbehaving, right? I don't want my kids to ever think that somebody putting their hands on them is okay, right? That's another discussion. The other thing she said is, you ready for this? This is a doozy. For those of you listening, this is a doozy. You cannot say you would be a better parent if you had better kids. Dude, that has shaped not only my personal life, my professional life. That logic is how it was built into how I treated people through the programs I've developed. You know, while everyone else is shitting on people coming back from prison, I was there trying to love them. And love them even while they were still fucking up. Like I never condemned someone who was still fucking up. And that's why FA is like, we don't need to condemn you. We don't need to call you out. We need to call you in.
Yep.
We need to be calling you in. Like, yeah, you're a fuck up. So was I. I know exactly what that's like. And I know how hard it is to change. When I finally stopped judging people differently than I judged myself, everything changed for me.
Hell yeah. Look at our 3 pillars. They're at the bottom. You guys, our 3 pillars are at the bottom of the screen right now. Forgiveness, reconciliation, and redemption, right? Like those 3 pillars were life-changing to me.
And all of those 3 pillars have empathy and compassion as pillars to those words.
Yep.
Forgiveness with empathy and compassion. Reconciliation with empathy and compassion. Redemption with empathy and compassion. None of those things can happen if you don't have empathy and compassion. And do you notice how none of that says judgment, ego, expectations, none of that, values, principles? When you put the person's worth first, that is a universal love language. Everyone responds to that, man.
Absolutely. And everyone out there, right? Like if you're watching and you're dealing with a family or a friend who's recently quit using and is starting the road of recovery, this is what we're talking about, right? Like when we look at them and we see them based on our view of where they should be, like that's not empathetic, that's not compassionate, that's not understanding. And every one of us, I have that problem, right? It takes me, and when I do, I usually call Sammy or someone else close to me and be like, this is what I'm feeling, you know, fuck, man, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we need to do. We need to guide ourselves back to that and be like, hey, listen, I get what you're thinking, but you're asking a 3-year-old to ride a motorcycle, right? You're asking a 3-year-old to operate a crane, right?
You know what this reminds me of? One that when Salinas was 2, she had started to walk. This was back in the days. Some of you may not know what this is, but when people had VCRs.
Yeah.
Salinas took a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and put it into VCR. She's 2. Let's put this into perspective. How much does she really know about the world? Yeah. Much less what a VCR is, right? Dude, I was ready to beat her ass. She's 2.
Yeah.
I mean, and how many parents have beat their kids' ass for doing shit like that, right? Yeah. But here we are today, looking back 20 years, 18 years, and saying, look, it wasn't her lack of understanding of that situation. It was my lack of understanding of that situation. And it was my unreasonable expectation of what I thought she should understand about the situation. And because I had such a misunderstanding, my anger was out the roof. And then judgment kicks in. She should know not to do that. She should know better. She needs to learn a lesson from this, right? Like when you really think about, man, how toxic this approach is, man. We're talking about a 2-year-old kid putting a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in the VCR, but we're also talking about how we look at people who are struggling with the addictions that we're addressing through our program, like alcoholism and substance use, and even recovering from being a criminal or gang member. It's the same freaking principle. It's not theirs, their lack of understanding that's causing your anger. It's your own.
Hey, one thing I want to point out about Salinas, if you really thought about it, at 2, she realized a rectangle slot went into a rectangle hole, and she got her shapes right. Like, yay! There's a win,
bro. That's
Oh.
genius. That's
Right.
genius. That's exactly what we learn, right? So the kid wants to draw, so they draw on the wall. So you beat the shit out of them, bruise their hand, yank them by the arm, tell them to sit on the fucking couch, take the crayon, never do that again. And then
Now they don't want to draw.
No, they want to draw. You can't beat that out of a kid. But they're so terrified because and they walk away from that with no understanding of what the fuck just happened. But when you can teach them over time, it might take 10 times. You give them a piece of paper and says, this is what you draw on, sweetie. And because you're a dumbass newbie parent or just a burnt out one, you don't realize there's paint today where you can just wipe that shit off. Fucking spend a few extra bucks per gallon and get the right paint. You got to fucking seal proof your house from kids. Like, duh.
I put up a classroom size chalkboard in Mateo's room.
Yeah.
And I keep chalk on it at all times. And he can draw on it anytime he wants.
I mean, they'll still do the dumb shit that they do, but they're little. You're big.
Yeah, he killed a couple of my fish the other day.
Again,
he poured soda into the fish tank.
Well, actually, he realized that liquid goes with liquid.
Water went into water, right? He was feeding the fish. He was helping the fish because he likes soda pop. The fish will like soda pop.
Oh my god, dude! Oh,
and I'm just looking at him, and I'm like,
it's not a bad assumption.
Like I'll get new fish. Don't do that again, bro. This is why. Look at the fishies. The fishies got to go in the toilet now. Like,
look, we all want to have kids, and then we end up hating our kids. Like
it's hard to be mad at him because he's so fucking cute. You know what I mean? And he gets his little braids. And
I'll tell you, it's not that he's cute. It's that you're in a good space in your head, which is why the result is just loving reactions.
Yeah.
When we get so hostile, angry, and frustrated with others, it's not because of what they're doing. It's our internal environment isn't in a good place, man. You ever had a day where no matter what anyone is going to do to you, you're not going to let it ruin your fucking day? You're just in a good fucking place. Or those other days where you're in a bad mood, it doesn't matter what kind of good mood anyone else is in, you're going to fuck the day up. Like, it's us. If you're living with someone who is frustrating the hell out of you because of their addiction, separate their part from their part and your part from your part, and you realize you can de-escalate your own emotions. It doesn't have to be dependent on what the other person says or does completely. Will you still be impacted? Yes. When the sun shines, you get in the shade. When it rains, you grab a raincoat. It doesn't mean that because you did those things that you're not impacted by what's happening. It just means you're doing what you can about it.
Yeah.
Respecting the limits of your control. Right? You cannot control the environment. You can only control some of what you do, but not all of what you do. Because you have reactions. Thoughts and feelings are imposed on you, just like anybody else. So I hope this has been helpful for folks, man. Like, we're really just trying to, honestly, the intention of this is to help those of you supporting people through addiction have a little better insight in what you can do to soothe yourself. Because you need soothing. You're so caught up trying to take care of something, you don't realize how the family dynamics are playing a part of this, how like the dynamic of wanting to help and maybe thinking you're helping, but coming to terms with the fact that your help might have to come in a different way or different form. You can't control the other person. Judging the other person doesn't help. I think compassion and empathy, that we don't want to, I think, Monte, this is always something you have to remember to say. Whenever you use words like compassion and empathy to people who want to hold people accountable, It's not that we can't hold them accountable. Accountability has to be a part of compassion and empathy. But we need to redefine what that accountability looks like. You know, there are such things as natural consequences. For example, in the reentry program month, I don't know if you knew this, but I never discharged anyone because they broke a rule or missed an appointment. Never. I stopped. You couldn't do anything for me to discharge you other than assault my staff. Right? Nobody ever assaulted my staff.
Oh, I know, bro. There were 6 months periods between times that I'd come to see you while dealing with my crap, and you still always let me come in.
So the professionals around me would say, well, where's the accountability? I'm like, no. What you're asking is, why am I not imposing accountability? Well, because in my career, I've learned that there are such things known as natural consequences in these situations. I also understand that the reason I'm seeing this person is because they don't have the best soft and hard skills to navigate life. I'm demonstrating for them unconditional love. Nobody in the professional environment was talking about love.
Right.
They're talking about policies. I have policies, but they're predicated by love. And this person is on supervision and is violating their parole by not showing up. Let their PO be the bad guy and let me be the safe place that holds space for them. I don't lie for them if the agent asks me. And not only do I not lie for them, I let the client know I'm not going to lie for them, but I don't have any bad intention. But I cannot lie for you because I have to be honest in my role.
Yep.
Every one of my clients understood that, but I wasn't pursuing it to the point where I'm proactively trying to sabotage my client's success by going over and beyond. They're doing their job, I'm doing my job, and my job does not consist of enforcing that kind of accountability. Where the accountability happens in my office is in the reflection of, here's where you said you want to be, but here's what you're doing. How is that going to help or hurt us getting there? And now you have to reflect on your own actions to see. And you're not even going to want to hear that if I'm being an asshole to you. The only reason you might listen to me when we have that discussion is because I've loved you through this entire process, for better or for worse. Unconditional love. It's through that same practice with your family, but accountability can be there. Yeah. It's just we have to rethink what that accountability looks like.
No doubt.
If you need to adjust your proximity, remember we started there. You have to adjust your proximity to these things. Normally you're angry because you're too close to it, or you overreact and put yourself too far. But what if you could adjust accordingly? Take as much as you can in the amount of doses that you can, and then, flex that muscle. Do what you can. I think accountability can also be letting people know what you're worried about. I'm worried you're going to die, Mom. I'm worried that you're going to go back to jail one day. Sammy, I'm worried that you're going to lose your temper. I love you. I don't want to see that happen. But when those things happen, this is what I feel. How can I help you through that? Right? What is their voice telling you, right? Like we talked about. Let's talk to that. Can we talk about that? What's working for you? What's not working for you? Where do you want to be? Where are you at? How do we get you there? Like those things, those kinds of discussions. But remember, if you've been an asshole and now you're trying that, they may not trust you for a minute, but if you're consistent enough with it, man, they'll come right in. They'll start to, they want and need that from you. And Jim's on the call, so I know Jim will recognize this. It's refreshing when you can walk into a room and just be yourself. Right? And you can say Jim always said the darndest country hick thing. But it felt right there. He's like country, right? He's like a little bit country. Like all the cheese slid off my pizza, pepperoni too. And I was like, what the? I knew it was crazy. I knew exactly what he meant, but I never heard it like that.
Yep.
Or people coming back off a relapse, and man, we're just happy to see you back.
Yeah, thanks for being here again.
What's the accountability? How about all those natural consequences? Right? Or when he hears things in the group that make him reflect, right? And then he has to make some decisions. I don't need to be God, man. I don't need to tell you when to live, die, breathe, or hold your breath. Like, that's not my job.
But see, that's the difference between FA and what we live and what those other people do, right? And this is something I tell people all the time. we're not looking at the struggle of recovery. We're looking at the joy of recovery, right? The struggle of recovery is going to be there no matter what we do. But if we don't identify what makes us happy, if we don't identify what brought us, back from the brink and feed it, right? And feed it, right? We have to feed that joy we find in this, or it's not sustainable, right? I can't be miserable forever and focusing on the misery without failure. I can't, right? So for me, FA, the greatest thing was finding the joy, right? Like the first time 10 years ago when you were like, well, what makes you happy about being in recovery? Where's your joy in recovery? Like, let's talk about that today. And I was like, what the fuck is this dude talking about? Right? Like, what the fuck do you mean joy? Like, what are you talking about? This is not something I learned in the 3,000 programs the state of Wisconsin made me go through. The fucking, right? The 10, 12 step programs I've been to. What are you talking about joy? There ain't no joy. We're miserable. We're in recovery, right? Like, and you're like, fuck.
And I'm always on the brink of failure.
Right, right. And I'm like, what makes me happy? Oh, well, shit. I haven't thought about that. Well, this kind of does make me happy. And this part of not going to prison makes me happy. And surprisingly, the respect that I got, not the fear, the respect that I had began to earn from people was amazing to me because it meant something, right? It made me feel good inside in a way I didn't understand when people were like, man, you're doing a really great job, man. Thank you for the help. When Jim Pease and you and everybody else got together and created the volunteer award for me and the Rising Star Award, and my PO knew and tricked me and was there, right? Like she was in on it too. And afterwards, she, shook my hand and she was like, it was hard not to tell you at our last meeting. I'm really proud of you. She's my parole officer. Why would I care about her pride in me? But I did. Like it made me feel some type of way. And I was like, this really makes me happy, right? Those were the joys. Like, and I continue to feed on it. The love part of what you were doing in the beginning was the most important part for me. And that's what's missing in our Department of Corrections. That's what's missing in our programs. That's what's missing in our daily lives is exactly that, the unconditional love. Like there's nothing Danica can do to make me not love her. There's nothing my mom can do to make me not love her. There's nothing I can do to make me not love me, right? And that's what's been the best part of me in recovery was the fact that I had to learn how to love me. And the joy was what brought that love to me, right? Like, because even when I came home, I didn't like me. Like I was in recovery. I was working hard towards being a better human being. I had already started those steps before I came home. But I still didn't understand that I had to forgive myself, reconcile with myself, and then love me. Like, and I still have problems with it. Like we're always going to have those issues with our self-worth and our self-esteem, right? Especially as criminals, right? Like, especially as addicts. But I do like me. Like, I mean, I'd slap my ass if I walk past me, like I love who I become. And that's what I think is important when I'm looking at people who are struggling in their addiction or their binge cycles, right? I'm just going to fucking love them, right? Like I'm just going to go and say, hey, whatever you do is what you do. I love you. I'll be here. But just remember there's consequences to what you do. And you're hurting people around you and yourself, right? And
how can we pull together? How can we help? Remember, step 4 in many ways is very basic to the point where you're saying, here's where you're at. Where would you like to be? How can we get there?
Together.
Right? It's because there are things in that there's so much layered, because there's parts you do, parts I'll do, parts we'll do. But nobody needs to do it angry and hostile. It's just not going to work. It's going to be counterproductive, man. I think we should always lead. The goal should always be to lead with love, compassion, empathy. It's the science. It's not just a feeling good thing. There's science behind this, man. we've looked at the benefit. Look, let's wrap up because it's late, but and we'll wrap up with this Tony Robbins thing I saw the other day. Tony Robbins said there were 100 actors who were approaching people for various reasons, and they were all approaching them in the exact same way. And there were, in the beginning, 50% of the actors approached people and said, "Hey, would you hold this coffee for a second?" Like just strangers. "Would you hold this coffee for a second? I got to do something real quick. I just need an extra hand. Please help me." And like 90% of the people took the coffee and helped them. And it only took like 30 seconds. And then in the other 50%, the other 50% of the actors who were doing that were saying, "Hey, I have $20. If you let me ask you 2 questions in the next 30 seconds, this $20 is yours. I just need you to hold this coffee." The only difference, they asked the same questions. The only difference was that the first 50, their coffee was cold when they handed it to the person, and in the other group, their coffee was hot when they handed it to the group. Like 90% of the people who held cold coffee, they were told about a person in this while they were interacting. They were told about a character, and then they were asked to judge the character's character. And the people who held the cold coffee said the character was cold and indifferent. The people who held the hot coffee said the person was like warm and kind. But they heard the same story. The lesson in that is that we are priming people on how to react to us, how to react to their environment. We want to hold the people who held the coffee accountable for their thoughts, but we play a part in how they're going to view the world. That's the biggest part of this message, man. The part that you play in someone's life who is suffering and struggling and failing, your part primes them to either see you in the world as cold or to see you in the world as warm. You remember the point in our lives, Monte, when we thought there were more bad people in the world than good. And then when we got to the point where we thought there were more good people than bad. And the only thing that changed was our perspective because of our internal environment. Same people in the world, we just see it differently now. And we're seeing things differently now. And we're experiencing things differently now. And the people that are still in my life are the people who loved me through that process. You know, Peyton, Jim, Sam. I think there was somebody else too.
Hey, Chris, Amy.
Chris.
Love you guys.
I see Amy really didn't mention my name today. That's painful. There's a natural question.
Kathy, what's up?
What's up, Kathy? Yeah, we're wrapping up now, y'all. Monte, it's been a good one, brother. I'm glad we were here today, man. I think this has really been a conversation I'm glad we had. I'm glad
we had it too, bro.
Yeah. Much love, y'all. I got yard work to do and a birthday party to get ready for.
We're working on cars all weekend.
Man, we need to fix this Jeep, bro.
If we had brought it here, it'd have been done by now.
I didn't have the bandwidth to take on an extra 2 hours.
I know, bro. Me and Selena talked about it last night.
I left Celine's apartment at 9 and got home at 5 in the morning, bro.
Yep.
It's a fucking nightmare.
Yeah. It was a rough day, man. We'll get it done. We'll figure out when I can get down there, either right before the wedding or after the wedding. And,
yeah. And guess what? We're going to be able to resource the project this time.
Badass.
We'll have all the resources we need.
Badass.
All right, man. We'll talk soon, brother.
Ain't nothing but a thing. I love you, bro. Love you guys. Thank you for being a part of Saturday Morning Informers. Every Saturday, 9:30 to 11. We ran a little late today, but we love you guys. We hope to see you again next weekend. So,
peace out, y'all.
Peace.